Hey, what's going on? Jeff Ratcliffe here. You know, the Tennessee Titans aren't one of the most exciting offenses in the NFL, but in all 32 teams, there is fantasy value to be had if you're looking in the right spots. So let's preview the 2019 Tennessee Titans for fantasy football. And I think we got to look at the running back position to kick things off. Because you know what? Last year, over the first 12 weeks of the season, Derrick Henry was the number 39 fantasy running back. Now, over that last month of the year, he was the number 1 fantasy running back. What was the difference with Derrick Henry before and after? It was a matter of volume. Before that point, he had only seen over a dozen carries twice. After that point, he was racking up 16 plus every single game. We saw him. He was an absolute monster down the stretch, 6.7 yards per carry. If you had Derrick Henry through the fantasy playoffs somehow, you very likely took down your league because he was a beast. He was an absolute beast. But the question that we have with the Tennessee Titans, are you going to use him like you used him last year? We can't guarantee that they will. We can't guarantee that they won't. So there's enough question here that you can't view Derrick Henry, obviously, as an elite option, and I really don't think you can view him as an RB1, but I do have him towards the front end of my RB2s, and the logic for it is simple. What you're doing in that range is you're taking some gambles. You're shooting for upside, and we know the ceiling can potentially be high if they pound the rock with him, but you're also baking into that the potential that, yeah, he could go bust. We've seen both very good and very bad out of Derrick Henry for fantasy purposes. The good news, though, is the days of us being a little bit worried that he's going to split carries with Dion Lewis, I think those are in the past. Dion Lewis very much fading in this backfield. So we're viewing Henry as a guy who very well could break out, but there are no guarantees that he will put an entire season together for fantasy purposes. Of course, over at the wide receiver position, I think this is really interesting when you look at these wideouts, because did you know that last year, of all wideouts in terms of team target share, Corey Davis actually ranked 6th. He saw 26% of the Titans' targets last year. That is a huge number. If you get anywhere near 30%, you are elite in the NFL. So to be up over 26% for Corey Davis, monster number. The problem, Titans didn't throw the ball that much. So that 26% only translated to 108 targets. There are a lot of people out there who said that Corey Davis didn't have a good season. You know what? I disagree with you. It isn't all about stats. I know in fantasy football, we always talk about stats, and you get fantasy points based on stats, blah, blah, blah. Corey Davis had a pretty good season. He didn't have a good fantasy season, though, and especially when a guy like this time last year, we were touting him as a breakout guy. When a guy gets touted as a breakout guy and does not have that breakout season, then of course, we're going to be disappointed for fantasy purposes. So that's sort of clouding Corey Davis this year, plus the fact that the team did draft A.J. Brown. So I think you view Corey Davis as a wide receiver 3 option. If you get anything more out of him, then that's good. But, certainly you could get a little less out of him in this offense, just given the overall state. Now, I mentioned A.J. Brown, an exciting player. He's versatile. He can play in the slot. Last year, to start the season out at Ole Miss, he was in the slot. Then once DK Metcalf got hurt, he kicked outside. So he has that versatility to play inside and outside. And there is a player he reminds me of. The player he reminds me of most is Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, to be fair, it's a very different offense in Tennessee than what we have in Pittsburgh. There's a lot more meat on the bone in the passing game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'm not saying that A.J. Brown is going to be the next Juju Smith-Schuster for fantasy purposes. But Smith-Schuster's versatility to play in the slot, to kick outside, to do all those different things, there are some parallels there with A.J. Brown. So while I don't really love A.J. Brown this year for fantasy purposes in 2019 redraft leagues, if you have A.J. Brown in dynasty leagues, I think you do have something good on your hands. He's a very talented player, and they're going to be nice complementary players to each other, him and Corey Davis. I think that gives them a nice duo going forward. Of course, at tight end, you have Delanie Walker. He's now 35 years old. He's coming off a year where he basically missed it was almost the entire season. I don't know if there's a lot of value to be had there. For a while there, we were looking at Delanie Walker as one of those guys you could get. You didn't have to draft him as an elite fantasy tight end, but he had elite potential. I think those days are in the past at this point. I would not be looking at Delanie Walker, even though you can probably get him at a value on draft day. I just don't think the ceiling is high enough to justify taking him this year. So I'm not going to be looking at Delanie Walker, even though he is, he's going to be the starter. I mean, Jonnu Smith is still there, but it's Delanie Walker's show as long as he's healthy. Just not a lot of upside. And I think a lot of this ultimately comes back to Marcus Mariota. Last year, maybe some people had thought that he was going to be a breakout the year before. I mean, we've seen there was that brief stretch a couple seasons ago where he actually was an elite level fantasy producer. He was, one of the top scorers there over that stretch. But that's really the only time that we've seen that out of Mariota. Over the last 2 seasons, and he had the issue last year that cost him a little bit of time, but still, it's not like he missed the entire season or anything like that. Over the last 2 seasons, 24 touchdown passes combined for Marcus Mariota. Not a lot of upside there for him. I'd love to say, hey, Marcus Mariota breakout year. I'm not going to say it. In fact, he's not going to be drafted in regular 12-team leagues, and I really wouldn't feel too comfortable with Marcus Mariota as my second quarterback in a 2-quarterback format as well. I really wouldn't be comfortable there. We need to see him take a step forward. That's going to obviously have a major impact on Corey Davis, on A.J. Brown, not necessarily on Derrick Henry, though. So if there's any potential, fantasy upside to be had, it's risky with the Tennessee Titans, but that upside is going to come with Derrick Henry. You want to see where these guys land in our rankings? You can check out that and more at PFF.com.